and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman on the Pin Down on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. They provide a ton of great content like everybody else in the Pistons content creation space. Pistons Jack, Locked on Pistons with Koo, all of that. Make sure you're checking all of that out, but specifically make sure you are reading Omari Sankofa II on the Detroit Free Press, and would love for you guys to check out the Motor City Hoops Substack, dropping video breakdowns, instant analysis, and notes throughout the playoff series over there. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining us live here. O2, I know it's been a long afternoon already. Thank you for taking some time here to go ahead and record this. Let's cut right to the chase. Detroit loses a heartbreaker in LCA 93-94. I want to get this off the top, out of the way. It's worth discussing because the 2-minute report already came out. It was already admitted. Your thoughts on the officiating in this game, specifically the last play of the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a missed call and they got hosed. Like, I don't know how else to put that. You know, THJ gets fouled on that 3-point attempt. And I actually watched that in the media room on TV because I was having some Wi-Fi issues and it was just easier to go in the media room and finish it up. So watching it live, I saw it was close, but I couldn't really tell watching it live about the replay just how close it was. But on replay, you look back and like Josh Hart's already in midair by the time THJ jumps, and like there's just nowhere for him to really go. So, I mean, tough way to go out. I mean, I really don't need to say that. That's pretty obvious. There was some stuff that kind of led up to that. But outside of the missed call, I thought also this was the game where it was probably most glaring that the Knicks have 2 go-to guys and the Pistons have 1, and then you're just kind of hoping guys step up at different points. And that's obviously a more, I guess, philosophical discussion about the team direction kind of going forward beyond this series. But yeah, I mean, my initial call is, that's just a tough way to go out. THJ got fouled, didn't get the call. Could talk about anything that led up to that point, but the NBA confirmed the missed call, and that's obviously the big story from the game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I felt like in the moment, usually I'm kind of very middle of the road, not worried about it. And I actually like rewound and went through the replays and all of that stuff to like really take a look at it. And we got some good looks and some good angles. It was obviously a foul. Josh Hart knew it was a foul whenever he got interviewed after the game. Like, you could tell by his quote, he knew. And then the 2-minute report came out. But it's kind of like people say, like, I don't understand what it matters, like, when the 2-minute report comes out and there's nothing that can be done about it. I mean, I guess they're taking accountability for it, but what does that really mean whenever the series is still 1-3 instead of 2-2? And so it is unfortunate. I feel bad for Pistons fans that they missed out on an opportunity to potentially win a game at LCA. We'll talk about some other opportunities this team did have to win games or win this game throughout it, going back to the first half, decisions that were made. I think what I don't want to get missed, Omari, is the play of the first 47 minutes and 59 seconds, though. Here's what I want everybody to understand why I get frustrated with like only wanting to talk about the officiating. I'm watching the Lakers-Wolves game, Omari, and it goes to halftime. And you know what they did? They showed the play, they showed the last 2-minute report, and that's all they talked about. And then they gave their takes on it. There was no mention of Cade Cunningham in his 4th playoff game having a 25-point triple-double or any other aspect of his game, whether the quality defense, the missed shots, the turnovers. There was no talk of Ausar Thompson and should he have played more minutes, should he not, anything like that. And to the chat's comments here, there's no talk. They didn't show Karl Anthony Towns' makes leading up to that situation, which were absolutely unreal. And I guess maybe I overcompensate because of it. I just don't want people to miss out on the game that was played for 47 minutes and 59 seconds. It was a wrong call. It was a bad call. If you want to call it egregious, I won't argue with you, but I would rather just like talk about the game in its entirety by first acknowledging Detroit got screwed. You would assume THJ makes at least 2 of 3 to win the game. I think his foot was definitely behind the line, so I think it was going to be a 3. He would have 3 attempts, down 1. So it sucks. I feel bad for them, but I also think there's a lot of other stuff to talk about in this game.
Yeah, you did talk about Cade, and yeah, for him to go 25, 10, 10, and 4, and just the stretch of defense he had, like, in the third was just insane. Like, he was just everywhere. Like, we have talked a bit this season about just his improvement as a shot blocker. And that's got to come and go on just based on matchups and, just how much of a load he's had to carry. But he absolutely locked in on both ends tonight. And it's pretty special. We know what he could do on offense, but when he's got it going on both ends like that, he's even drawing charges on Karl Anthony Towns. Just, completely locked in. That was incredibly fun. He absolutely had a star performance. 24 points in a game where they won with 94 points. That's a hard-earned 24 points. Yeah, great game. A lot of, a very fun game by Cade. It sucks the game ended the way it did because it does overshadow. And Cat, too, and Brunson, all those guys, this was a great game of star performances, I thought, all the way around. It sucks that a game like this, honestly, just kind of got, I think, spoiled by the way it ended because, the Pistons really battled. They were down 16. I think that a stretch where they outscored the Knicks 42-16, when they took control of the game, going from a 16-point deficit to a 11 or 12-point lead in the fourth. Lots of great performances. It just sucks that it ended this way, man. It does suck that this is going to become a dominant talk. So we can talk about Cade and we can give him his credit and say that he was a lead on both ends, and this is exactly the type of game that we knew he had in him as far as just affecting both ends.
Yeah, I want to be clear before we move on. I understand Detroit Pistons fans' frustrations with how the game ended, and obviously we both acknowledge it was a bad call. I just don't want that to overshadow the game that was played. And like I said, by both teams. As an NBA fan, I would kind of be pissed if I missed the game and that's all I saw. And I didn't know that Cat made two And here's the other thing. Jalen Duren's defense, and guys, we will talk about Jalen Duren's defense and some of the stuff, but Duren made incredible defensive plays on both of those attempts, and Cat just made big shots. Let's stay with Cade. Omari, Wes, you can get in on this. Obviously, the chat as well. Thank you guys for joining us here live. How many stocks do you think Cade is averaging over his last 3 games in this series? He had 0 in game 1. How many do you think he's averaging over the last 3? Stocks, steals and blocks combined. Wes says 5.
Yeah, because I know he had a few blocks in the last game too. I don't know about 5, but I would guess 4.
It is 4. He had, So here's the crazy thing. He had 2 steals in the game 2 victory. And then in game 3, he had 2 blocks and 4 steals. And then tonight he had 4 blocks to go along with the 10 rebounds, 10 assists. Cade Cunningham in his first 4 playoff games is averaging over 40 minutes a game. Remember, his ability to stay healthy and all that stuff came into question his first few years in the NBA, kind of squashed that this season. He's averaging 26 on 44, 25, 79. So my thing is, he's not even shooting the 3 ball that well. He's only taking 4 attempts per game, and he's only made 4 in the entire series. And he's even at 79%, just a touch below 80 at the free throw line.
And he's also not getting to the line much.
Yeah, only 6 attempts. But here's the raw numbers. 26, 9, 9, 1.5, 1.5. We talk about data collection. That's the data collection you want to see, right? Ultimate, we're going to talk about Ausar. We're going to talk about Ron. We're going to talk about Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., all of it. Ultimately, for this team to eventually compete at the highest level, we've seen it. You have to have a 1A player, a face of the franchise, an all NBA year in and year out type of player. Cade Cunningham did that in the regular season. I wanted to see what it would look like in the playoffs. And I'm not sure outside of the turnovers, there's been any sort of disappointment whatsoever. I will say one thing that has been overlooked down the stretch, the final 3 possessions of the Pistons game was a Cade missed mid-range jumper, a Cade turnover, and a Cade missed mid-range jumper before the Tim Hardaway Jr. what should have been a foul. I do think it's fair to at least note that because there's always growth, even with a star like Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, and, he took accountability at after the game. He got the mid-range shot he wanted. Might have left too much time on the clock, honestly. They had 7 seconds left, so if he had made that, I'm curious to see how the rest of the game would have gone, honestly, given how Brunson and Cat were cooking. But, yeah, overall, really impressive stuff from Cade. I think with him, it's never really been the ability to do it. We know he can. It's just one of those things that you have to see, right? I think it's especially if there's one thing with Cade that you would still like to see him improve going forward, it is if he could just continue to get his win and stamina up, because I think that's probably been, an impact on his ability to do that in certain games. Granted, he also has a really huge offensive load, so I think that also pulls away from it as well. But I already know the biggest talk of the offseason for this fan base is going to be, how do we get Cade Cunningham more help? And that's really just the main takeaway from this series, is just that Cade can only do so much by himself. You imagine putting him next to, somebody who has that type of gravity, whether J.I. continues to improve and he comes back and he's that type of guy or whatever else they may do, like just how much more effective he could be. But it's like you said, 26, 9, 9, 1.5, 1.5. Those are elite numbers. You assume that this is the worst he's going to be for the rest of his playoff career. And like, that's a good starting point. Like through 4 games, I think he has 2 performances where, he's being defended by the entire team and, he's still getting to his spots and just completely dictating the flow of the game. So, if you're the Pistons, I think you feel pretty fantastic about the guy that you're about to have to pay even more max money to, once he gets this NBA selection here soon.
Yeah, I mean, 26, 9, and 9 with two-way impact, I think you can build off that, especially when it's your first playoff series, O2. Like, that's what I think needs to continue to be highlighted is we don't always see guys do this in their first series, especially when they're the dude and the only dude. Like, he is option 1, 2, and 3 on this team. Like, who is the player that in a real playoff series should be the third option? I don't think I'm missing somebody there. Tobias just left Philly because he couldn't be that for Philly. And like, that's no knock on Tobias. I thought he had a really good stretch of basketball in this game after a slow start. And I do want to talk about the slow start eventually. Wes brings up a really important note, O2. Those final 2 shots, the mid-range jumpers, were good looks. And they were isolation against OG Anunoby, who I think has been really good defensively in this series all season long. I don't know if he's going to make an all-defense team, but he's going to be one of the first guys out if he doesn't. And he created space in those situations. So not only do you have a guy that performed the entire game on both ends, you have a guy who you can just put the ball in his hands and say, go get a bucket. Now, should they always do that? Would I like to see JB maybe try to be creative at times? Sure. But to know you have that guy, I think I understand Pistons fans' frustration with this could be 2-2, it could be 3-1, and especially if they lose game 5, it's going to be very, very frustrating. But I think when you look back, whenever this series ends 0-2, or this playoff run ends, if they come all the way back, I think Pistons fans have to feel great about having Cade Cunningham as the face of their franchise.
Yeah, I think so. All you want to see from your star player is that they can get it done when the game is on the line, and he's done that. They have defended Cade with everything they have, like physically. Like in this series now, I think we've kind of seen thoroughly what you have to do to stop Cade and what type of defense you have to throw at him to slow him down. Because even against a guy like OG, like he can still have strength advantages here and there, could still like knock him off his target. Like he had that spin move where he got brought him to the floor in game 3 late, before he had the verticality call with Cat. But yeah, like we've seen that repeatedly. Like there's nobody on this Knicks team that can defend Cade one-on-one. And in the entire league, maybe the only guy who like consistently has success against Cade defensively is Lou Dort. And he also benefits from playing from a team that's probably got the most good perimeter defenders in the league. So it's not like he's doing it single-handedly. But, but it takes an army to slow him down. You got to feel pretty good about that. And the only question is, where do you go from here? This is a different topic, but I really do want to see, even if just having a guy like Jaden Ivey can just give you enough to, just make it so that teams cannot attack Cade as relentlessly as they have, right? That's clearly what they're missing. And yeah, he's built for it. Pistons fans should feel good. Cade should feel good going forward.
YouTube user says the broadcast put up some stats that only 2 other guys have done in their first 3 playoff games. It also put up a stat that the third quarter, when he went for 10, 5, 5, and 3 or something like that, was the first time in 20 plus years somebody's done that in a quarter. And also in that quarter, I think it was like the Knicks' second lowest scoring quarter of the season in that third quarter. Just some really, really good stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's exciting to see. I love it for Cade. I know we've always felt like this was who Cade was and could be. I know, like talking to people privately, I've said, hey, I want to see it in the playoffs. I thought I knew what we would see, but until you see it, you don't know for sure. And again, that's what was great about this team and is this playoff run is not over. They get at least one more game here, but we've seen it play out in real time. We've seen it play. We can't say, well, he did it for 75 games. We're sure it'll translate to the playoffs. No, we've seen it play out against an experienced playoff team. He's done it on the road. He's done it on home. He's done it against a physical defense, against a really good wing defender. I think it's just really impressive. Something Pistons fans should be excited about. We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, we probably should talk about Ausar Thompson, Ron Holland, Jalen Duren, maybe some JB decisions throughout the game. We'll get into all of that right after this.
All right, we're back with segment 2. Just beyond Cade, what stood out offensively to you in this game? Because I would say, one, it felt like the skies parted when THJ first got that three-pointer to fall early in the game after they started off 0 for 10. 2, it seems like things opened up dramatically when Malik Beasley finally got a 3 to fall after missing his first 5, and then he knocked out his next 2 after that. And then 3, Tobias stepping up, and he had some foul trouble. But again, I thought it was him and THJ that really kind of sparked that initial run at the end of the second. Just what did you see kind of from the supporting cast in this game as far as how they were able to step up and kind of plug those gaps, especially after that awful start they had coming up?
Okay, so that's what I was going to say, O2, is it was a bad start. And that's where I don't want us to miss out on that. My notes over at the Substack start with sluggish start offensively, turnovers. And I just thought it was kind of a lackadaisical pace, a slow pace. I didn't think there was any sense of urgency. I gave the Knicks a little bit of credit for disrupting them, but I think I agree with JB. They showed it on the broadcast where in the timeout, JB said, they're not doing it to us. We're doing it to ourselves. I kind of agree with JB. For whatever reason, they just didn't get in a flow. They didn't have any chemistry. I just think they need to play with pace. And I'm not saying it always has to be a transition bucket, O2. You can play with pace after a make, but there's just too many possessions, I feel like, where they walk up, 16 on the shot clock, they make one pass, they're lazy, slow, getting into the action. OG gets physical, the entry pass isn't made there, and now they're down to 10, and then they're scrambling to go do something aggressive. I just think that they have to play with more pace. Make, miss, turnover. If it's true transition, even in the half court, the pace is too slow for this team right now, in my opinion.
Yeah. First quarter, I'm looking at my notes now. They were down 24-12 at the 3:32 mark. Knicks opened the game 4 or 5 from 3. There were some late closeouts, but really the Pistons were turning the ball over like crazy. They had 5 turnovers in the first 9 minutes of the game. They had 8 turnovers by the 7 or 8 minute mark of the second quarter. And I mean, we haven't seen some of these spells where this team's just turned the ball over prolifically like they did last season and the season before, but that still sneaks up on them. And yeah, you're right. They just weren't focused coming out the gate. I don't know what it was about that long stoppage after the early timeout from JB, but it seemed like they came out with good energy and then they just completely went cold. And some of that too, I think, is just the ongoing slump, when shooters are not knocking down shots too, right? This team, they feed off of each other's energy, I think more so than the crowd energy. And when Bees can't get to his 3 and get to his shibbies and stuff, and
sure,
THJ's, you could just tell that all kind of has a knock-on effect, especially when Cade's already bogged down, dealing with OG and Michael and Josh Hart being back on him. Again, when I said it felt like the sky parted when THJ finally got that first 3 to fall, it was oh, okay. That's literally when they started to go on that run, because they just literally needed one shot to fall for the Knicks defense to be okay, we can't commit all the way to Cade. Now we have to, and then Cade started to find his spots and you see it begin to unfurl from there.
Organic says, what up, Doe? What up? Thank you guys, everybody, for joining. I am starring comments. I know there's a lot of Ausar and Ron comments. We'll obviously get to those. Here's what's funny. So there are obviously 16 teams in the playoffs. Where do you think the Pistons rank in pace?
Man, that's tough because, just with the NBA playoffs being the way they are, it seems like all the teams are averaging around 100 points a game.
To be fair, it should be more what series, because the pace... Yeah. The pace is the same for both teams. And
that's kind of what I was getting stuck on. I'm I would have to compare it. But I would assume that they're towards the bottom even so.
So there are 8 series. Where do you think they rank in terms of the 8 series?
I would say they're either 6 or 7.
They're actually third, which
really?
I agree. Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
the Memphis OKC one is first, which makes sense because Memphis is one of the fastest paced teams in the NBA. Indiana Milwaukee is 2, which I assume is mostly driven by the Pacers. And so the Memphis OKC series is above 100. Indiana Milwaukee's at 98. Detroit New York is at 97. There is then a cliff to the other series that goes to under 93. And then those ones are all relatively close. That one is the Warriors Rockets. The Celtics Magic, makes sense, is the slowest pace at under 90. So just interesting. Yeah, like Harry says, whoa. Yeah, I'm surprised as well. It is interesting. I assume that's way below. Here's the other interesting nugget. So every team that's winning their series has a positive net rating other than the Clippers Nuggets is 2-2. The Pistons have the best of the losing teams in terms, they are at negative 0.6 in terms of net rating, even though they've lost 3 games in this series. I think everybody kind of understands that they've just played really, really close games.
And this has been, the margin's been razor sharp. Like literally like 2 plays from the Pistons being up 3-1 right now. Like it's been remarkably close. Like no matter what happens in game 5, like I feel like people should come away from this series like these are pretty 2 evenly matched teams, even though the Knicks are a bit stronger up top. And I think that speaks to the Pistons defense. They've obviously kind of shortened their rotation in the playoffs a bit, but, like their depth outside of just scoring the ball, I think has been pretty decent. And then also, too, they're doing this without Beef Stew. And like he's like their most key defender. And they've still, like they held the Knicks to 10 for 44 shooting in the second and third quarters. That's like 22 or 23% shooting. Like they've been able to find ways to kind of recreate that assertiveness and physicality without Stu. So yeah, like that's a surprise me that I was thinking about that after the game. Like the net rating has to be within 1 because like regardless of the series score, like these teams have been like right there, especially the last 2 games. Like it's back-to-back 1 or 2 point wins for the Knicks that essentially just came down to officiating at the end. I mean, it's been remarkably close. This could still be a 7-game series too as well. It wouldn't surprise me.
Let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. What do you expect to see on Tuesday night? Because Frank says, I expect the Pistons team to play hard and pissed on Tuesday. I actually agree. It was one of my last notes before I got to the actual game stuff was this team has responded all year 0-2. This doesn't seem like a team to me that's going to be down 1-3, have a call go completely against them in really back-to-back games. I know like the backcourt call against Brunson I know there's some like the NBA has said that's the right call, right? Because it's momentum or something or whatever. But I just think that they're going to rally around each other and they're going to go into Madison Square Garden and play well. Like maybe they still lose, but I think they're going to respond. I don't think there's any like quit or give up in this team. We haven't seen that a single time all year long. I expect at the very least they come out early and can really compete. Now, could the Knicks have a ridiculous 3-point shooting game? Could Detroit struggle from 3 and all of that? Like absolutely. And to your point, you continue to bring up Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. and rightfully so. 7-22 from 3 tonight. There was exciting stretches where they both made shots and you saw what it opened up for the team, but ultimately they still ended up under 33%.
Yeah. And that's the other aspect too. Yeah. You go to New York, like you're going to have that crazy Madison Square Garden crowd. But again, like this team seems to like those types of environments. And again, like it's like I said, I think you come away from these games and you're like, we are literally right here. And there's no reason why we can't win the next 3. Like if anything, you should feel more confident. Like Malik Beasley shot, like what was he like before he started knocking out threes in this game? Like he was something crazy, like 4 of like he was shooting terribly from 3 in games 2 or 3. Like he just started knocking out shots.
It was all short too, man.
Yeah.
It was really, really, it was getting frustrating. So coming into this game in the series, so throughout the series, he went 6 for 12 in game 1, 1 for 8 in game 2, 2 for 10 in game 3. So he was
3 for 18.
3 for 18 and probably missed his first 3 or so in this game. So, I mean, I'm guessing he went on like a 3 for 21 stretch or something like that.
Yeah, he missed his first 5, I think, tonight. So he was 3 for 23 before he finally got some to fall.
Real quick, our guy Andrew Claudio, an olive branch to my Pistons Pulse brethren, one hell of a basketball game. Real shame it ended the way it did. Andrew, thank you. I would
good seeing you, man.
Exit stage left before you get attacked here. No, I'm just joking. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Yeah, Harry says misses his first 5. So yeah, it's one other note, or a couple other notes in terms of offensively, just as we stay on that end of the floor. I think the Knicks have done a really good job. Yeah, Harry, shout out GMAC. He's legit. I agree 100%. The Pistons have run some nice actions all year long. I think the Knicks, this is what you see about playoff basketball. The Knicks have keyed in on a lot of those and taken those things away. We did finally see the Pistons capitalize. So I'll give one example, 0-2. Detroit runs their favorite action, one of their favorite actions. I don't know what their favorite action is, but they throw it to Cade at the elbow and then they want to cut Schroeder over the top and then set a ball screen. Well, OG way overplays it. So Cade simply this time, instead of trying to force it, just attacks the other way because OG's out of position now, gets into the lane, hits a little left-hand floater. Beasley, I think, did something similar where he broke the action because McBride was overplaying it, ended up getting a catch-and-shoot 3 off a sideline out of bounds. So I do think that in some ways Detroit is figuring that out because the Knicks have overplayed so much. The other thing I'll say real quick, they finally connected on a few short rolls in this game. And I think it's so important. If New York puts 2 on the ball, he has to get it out of his hands, and then the short roll guy has to make the right decision out of that.
No doubt. What have you seen from... What did you see from Tobias in this game outside of the foul trouble?
Yeah, so I thought he struggled early on. Like I thought the first portion of his game, Omari was quite rough. And I thought Cat was kind of getting at him a little bit. And I think we saw some issues with having Harris on Cat because he's not as used to guarding ball screen stuff. So, for example, there's a first quarter play where it looks like Ausar gets beat by Brunson, but he's icing the ball screen and Harris isn't in the right position. So Brunson gets downhill. They've also decided to start posting him up. Sometimes he holds up, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes they bring a double, which opens up other things. Here's what I will say. He absolutely responded. And the beginning of it was the end of the first half. The final 2 minutes of the first half was huge. And then a great response in the third quarter as well. Unfortunately, the 5th foul call, which I haven't seen anybody complain about. It seemed like they called it on somebody, then they switched it to him. I do think that was a big call because it seemed like he was kind of the energy that was driving that into the first half and into the third quarter.
Yeah, he had the up and under 3-point play. And then I think TSJ might have missed a shot or somebody. And like Tobias is sort of just in the middle of the paint surrounded. He comes up with the offensive rebound, finishes. Like it really does seem like this team kind of goes the way he goes, like outside of Cade. I think we saw that in games 3 and 4, and especially in games 1 and 2, where he really stepped up and kept things going while they were hounding Cade. So I'm curious to see in game 5, assuming, Stu doesn't come back, like how much Tobias can continue to hold up in that matchup because he's giving up a lot of size, and that's a difficult matchup to do for 5 games. Like he's given up about 3 inches. He's got to be giving up about 30 pounds or so. Like that's not easy at all. Like that's really not easy. I think he's had one of the toughest jobs of anybody in this playoff series.
Yeah, I mean, if New York ends up winning this series, the biggest development to me is after game 2, New York being able to self-scout and say, we have to get Karl Anthony Towns involved. And in games 3 and game 4, they've done so. They've got him design post actions. He started shooting the trail 3. Jalen Duren and Paul Reed messed it up in this game, losing track of him and giving up. Like the Paul Reed one was deep, but I'm like, he's making them right now. I don't care if he's at 30 feet. He's shown over the last 2 games he can make those. And so to me, that ends up being the biggest development if New York wins the series is Cat and the Knicks, like making an emphasis, as you said at the top. What'd you say at the top? This is a game where New York having the second option was the ultimate deciding factor, and the fact that Detroit doesn't really, really hurts them. And what's the points per game? I don't know if Basketball Reference isn't updated. Tobias was the second leading. No, who was it? Schroeder's been the second leading scorer. But to me, it's like, that's kind of the point here is everybody thought it was going to be Beasley coming into the series because that's who it was in the regular season. And now it's somebody completely different. I just think that's a thin line to live on in terms of your second scorer in a playoff series, Omari.
Yeah, it just shows just how thin their margin for error is. Like,
yeah.
You could do everything right for a long stretch, but if Cat decides, all right, I'm going to knock down this turnaround jumper from behind the basket, and then those 2 threes, like, it's just tough to contend with 2 players who can do that. Obviously, Brunson in the fourth quarter, like, is trying to live up to the clutch player of the year thing. I think he had 15 in the fourth tonight. Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can nitpick, but I really just do think these games have just been to, like, the Knicks have 2 guys that they can call on to lead the day, and the Pistons have 1. And, like, there's no one else who can really hold to that same standard if they don't come through because it's Cade and a bunch of road guys. So yeah, again, I'm trying not to get to that conversation, but again, yeah, if you're the Pistons, you're looking at these games like we are clearly outgunned and we're without our best defender and we're still right there. Yeah, like there's no reason why they're not going into game 5. Like we could absolutely come back here on game 6 and make this a series.
To MC313, I'm not too hurt because I remember being happy we get 25 wins. Barely losing game 4 is way beyond my expectations. Once Ivy is back next year, there's a different team. What Omari is alluding to is we are trying to hold off on off-season conversation until we actually get to the off-season. We are too excited about getting to break down and talk about playoff basketball to then jump past playoff basketball into the off-season where, quite honestly, we don't have a whole lot of NBA draft to talk about. So we're going to go to a short break. O2, we got to get to the Ausar Thompson conversation. If there were 2 things that dominated my timeline post-game, it was the foul call and the Ausar Thompson minutes. So we will get to that right after this.
right, we are back with segment 3. And let's go ahead and talk about Ausar. As you talked about the minutes, he was the only starter that didn't crack 10 minutes in the second half. He played 8 minutes and 49 seconds in the second half. In the fourth quarter specifically, he played 2 minutes and 44 seconds. Ausar is such a unique player, obviously, with everything he gives you on defense. And then, obviously, offense. I think it's been almost like a jigsaw puzzle at times, trying to figure out exactly how to utilize him. Did you feel like they needed to have him in the game anyway down the stretch when Brunson's cooking the way he was?
Okay, I want to just get the comments out here. So YouTube user says, Cade is the guy. We just need to put more scoring around him. Again, we'll talk more about that. I'm a little concerned about how much Ausar hurts the offense in the playoffs. Rise Above says, keeping Ausar on the bench up 11 in the fourth with Brunson walking us down is on JB. And GVH says, Ron and Ausar showing their youth, and man, do we miss Stewart. Okay, Ausar Thompson. Here's what I will say. I do think that Ausar has been rough offensively. I know there are net rating and plus minuses and stuff like that out there that says even though he has struggled offensively, it doesn't tank the offense. And that's fair. Okay, net ratings are what they are. I will also say this about net ratings. I did this with Wes before we started. If you look at net rating, do you know what players Cade Cunningham and Dennis Schroeder are on this team?
Curious to find out.
The 6th and 7th, according to net rating for 4 games. They are Dennis Schroeder and Cade Cunningham have negative net ratings in this series. And Ron Holland has a very positive net rating, which is why I think you have to be careful with net ratings and plus minuses.
Especially in small sample sizes, like a 4 or 5 game series.
Correct.
Where so much of that just kind of comes down to rotations and
yes.
Like timing.
If you were on the floor in the 21-0 run in the fourth quarter of game 1, that's going to kill your plus minus and net rating.
People were talking about plus minus in that game, and they were like, Isaiah Stewart was the only player with a plus minus. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because they gave him a 21 run as soon as he left the game, which I don't know what the run would look like if he stayed, but, you know, anybody who's on the floor after that's not going to have a good plus minus. It's just going to crush it. It doesn't mean you had a bad game, you know?
Yeah, so, I mean...
Yeah. And I also just want to say, I see single game plus minus used a lot too. And it bugs me. I just think only in very specific circumstances do I think it's useful when you're making very specific points, but it just doesn't work as a catch-all. They were good, they were bad. It just doesn't.
I think it's fair context. My only point here is, if we're going to use net rating as an to say a certain player absolutely is something, then you have to use that on every single player. So I guess my point is, if you're saying Ausar Thompson's net rating says he should be on the floor more, then that means you should say Cade Cunningham and Dennis Schroeder's net rating say they're not one of the 5 best players. They should say play less. That's all I'm saying. I think all of it is part of a piece of a puzzle. I just don't think we can use it for a catch-all. I like to use plus minus just for funny stats sometimes. Like, I think there's this game where Paul Reed was plus 11 in 13 minutes or something like that. There was also game 3 where Tobias was plus 10, and I thought he played awful in that game. And so it's like you said, I think an 82 game sample is a little bit more fair. I don't know. I'm bad at statistics. Wes, tell me if that's a fair statement. If 82 games is fair. Okay, he gives me the thumbs up. That makes me feel better. Friends don't let friends use single game plus minus. Yes, that is true, Wes. So, okay, I just wanted to get that out. With that said, I do think Ausar, here's what I would have liked to see from JB. I would have liked to see some offense defense with JB starting earlier in the game, not just in the final minute. For example, there was a play where Cade must have went to the free throw line or somebody. I thought JB could have subbed Ausar in, knowing that they were about to play a defensive possession, and most likely there's a break in action or a timeout coming, even if he had to play a couple offensive possessions. And Brunson came down, went at Schroeder, was too big for him and scored. I think the minutes within the game are fine. I don't think he should set an entire fourth quarter. And I think that there are times where he can play a little bit offense, defense, and get him in there. So if you go the other way and the Knicks go to the free throw line, then sub him out because you know you're about to go play offense. You don't only have to do it in the last 30 seconds of a game is, I guess, my thought.
Yeah. And a lot of it to me, it just feels like they in general just don't have a lot of confidence in Ausar right now to be able to figure things out offensively. There's always a couple of glaring possessions in the game where he's stuck trying to figure something out, and everybody in the Knicks are kind of just fine with it. He had an open 3, I think, in the first half, and they're just kind of fine from taking it. Cade gave him the ball with 6 seconds left. He's matched up against Michael, and he tries to create something, but it's just, there's an awkwardness. I think especially when you have Ausar with another non-shooter. And I think that's another issue that you got to have with Stu being. Now, Stu doesn't take a lot of threes, but Stu could hit a three and, at least make the defense think twice about leaving him open. And I just don't think their lineups right now are friendly Ausar lineups. Like, he does so much for you and he's so good defensively on Brunson that I agree. I think you can't just leave on the bench the entire time that Brunson is going off. But I also understand it from the standpoint of, the Pistons locked down the Knicks in the second and third, and Ausar was a big part of that, but it wasn't just Ausar. Other guys had a role in that as well. And, I think in the flow of a game, I think the inclination to favor shooting and being able to hit shots when you're going up against Cat and Brunson is understandable. The reality is that there's just no inherent roster solution to kind of overcome that. And it just puts you in a spot where you just kind of have to live with, Ausar having a few awkward offensive possessions where there's really no place for him to be. But yeah, in the course of a high-pressure playoff series, I think it's just as simple as that. You see the coaching staff having second thoughts about having a guy out there that is essentially just being ignored on the perimeter. It makes everybody else's life a little bit harder, makes it easier to, lock in on Cade the way teams had. It's tough. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I just think you can't only play him 2 minutes when Brunson's going off the way he has.
I agree. That was my thing from this game and some other games as well, was I think you can do it timely if you're a little bit frustrated with what he's doing on the offensive end. I also want to be very clear about something. This is not an indictment of how I feel about Ausar Thompson long-term for this team.
Not at all. Not at all.
It's his first playoff series in season 2, and we knew the playoffs weren't going to be conducive to his offensive game, while at the same time showing the defensive impact he can provide you. So I'm not sitting here saying Ausar's not a long-term piece or something like that. I also think I'm getting the data collection I need for Ausar. And so that's why I don't get overly mad about it. The other thing is, he's averaging 1 minute less per game than what he averaged in the regular season. This wasn't a guy we saw consistently play 30 minutes a night in the regular season. Now, whether that was health related, whether it was coaching staff decision related, whatever, I don't know. But it's not like all of a sudden he went from 30 minutes a night to 22. He went from 22 to 21. I mean, he played 22 minutes tonight, which is what he played in the regular season. I think what I would like to see is strategic possessions and minutes in the fourth quarter where his defensive impact can come into play, especially once you see Brunson return from the locker room, get it going. I think you have to make that concession. But I like the point you made. It's not like they went on a run in the third quarter and it was with Ausar out. The Knicks only scored 94 points tonight, Omari, when he played 22 minutes. So it's not like, I don't know. I understand the frustration. I think strategic minutes in the fourth quarter. That's my take.
Yeah, and this is all predictable stuff too. We've always talked about, if you're playing Duran and Ausar together, obviously that's going to help you rebounding-wise a lot. That's going to help you athleticism-wise, physicality, all that stuff. It's just in the playoffs, so often it's just about who can get you a bucket. And a lot of times, as good as Ausar is on Brunson, Brunson's still going to get some buckets in the fourth quarter. And I think that there's an awareness of some of these guys are just going to get a bucket regardless, right?
They're good basketball players.
You could even look at Houston's the best defensive team or second best defensive team in the league, and what are they going to do with a guy that could just get a bucket? There's nothing you can do in the playoffs. That's just part of it. This is all good stuff for Ausar, I think, long term. Because for him to realize his potential, he's got to be able to take advantage of mismatches, and he's got to be able to add something on offense outside of just the dunker spot, lobs, and secondary creation and transition, right? He just got to add something to it. We knew that coming into this series, and none of this is surprising at all. I think this is all very predictable, just knowing how playoff series tends to play out. So developmentally, I don't know where Ausar goes from here, whether that is developing the jump shot or the handle or whatever it may be. But but going forward, you've as good as you are defensively, you've got to add a little bit more, and that's still going to be a point of emphasis for him going forward. Is what else can you add beyond the defense in those close moments in the playoffs or even in the regular season?
And I want to be clear, I don't even know that it has to be the shot. If he was finishing some of the attempts he was getting right now and not turning the ball over on some of the passing attempts, I think you could leave him on the floor more consistently. He's shooting 44% from the field in this series, but we know where every Ausar attempt comes from. He also has 11 almost 3 turnovers per game in this series. And again, I know people will point to the overall offensive net rating with him, but what I watch, it's not there quite yet. Wes brings up an interesting point. You could you play Ausar with Harris as your 4 and 5? Harris is guarding Cat anyway. So that means now Ausar can either stay on Brunson, or if you want to put Schroeder on Brunson, now Ausar can be your roamer over on Josh Hart. I think that would be interesting to me, O2. What do you think?
I think so. Like, I was thinking this after the game is maybe you just commit to going small. Like, if Tobias is going to be the matchup, and if Josh Hart's going to start knocking down threes, then, and this is, I guess, the other part of the convo, and we also talked about this coming into the season, is how does Jalen Duren fit defensively? And I think through 4 games, the answer is not very well, and that's not a Jalen Duren. Like, that's an archetype issue. You are, a big who, like, defensively, you're just not able to roam around the court in the same way that, some other guys can, and we see centers like that, have to figure out what they can do defensively in the playoffs, and we thought that might be a situation for Duren, and that's kind of what happened. Like Ausar, pretty predictable, but if you have Duren out there on Josh Hart and Josh Hart's snaking around and knocking down threes and this and that, you might as well just commit to going small at that point. Commit to a starting lineup with Ausar as your 5. Like, you could bring Duren off the bench and have him match up with the Mitchell Robinson minutes maybe, or if you just need like a rebound, like whatever it may be, you can do that. But that's probably a conversation you probably start to have at some point too, because Josh Hart, like, I thought really made an impact on this game. Just with the shot making, with the normal Josh Hart stuff. Like, that's tough if he's going to do what he did tonight or today.
Yeah, I mean, I know people probably don't want to hear us talk about the Knicks, but I love Josh Hart. I'm sorry. Like, I think he just makes winning plays. I think he makes every note I have for every game is like momentum changing play, Josh Hart, momentum changing play, Josh Hart. And I think I like him even more because Knicks fans seem to hate him for some reason.
He's such a Swiss Army knife. Like, he's just the definition of a Swiss Army knife.
They don't like him because it kills the 5-out idea of the Knicks with Karl-Anthony Towns playing on the... I don't know. I like Josh Hart. I would take him... Well, not on this team because this team can't have any more non-shooters. So I guess I don't like him that much. But I do think he makes winning basketball plays a lot. Boo this man. MC313 says, boo this man, boo. Listen, man, I've been called out for a lot of stuff recently. People don't like my takes right now. So he's a Piston if I've ever seen one, says Wes. What did somebody get me about the other day? I don't remember. I don't have time to think about it right now. I'll slow down the show. But real quickly, I do want to bring up Ron Holland. I thought he was pretty rough in the first half.
Very chaotic.
Yeah,
very chaotic.
I broke down Ron over on the Substack. I thought he had a decent game 3. It was better whenever I watched it after the fact. I was hoping for a good game 4. It was not. The process was bad. Listen, guys, he misses a lot of defensive rebounds. He had 2 on 1 possession that ended with, it was an Anunoby bucket. And who was the foul on? I want to see if it was actually somebody, and it was on Cade. So I guess it ended up being that big of a deal because Cade didn't get in foul trouble. I would have liked to see him maybe get a rotation in the second half, but I understand why he didn't.
Yeah, just very chaotic in the first half. And Ron's energy, his chaos often is very good, and in this game, it just didn't manifest the way you would like to see it manifest. He had the exact same turnover, I think, on back-to-back plays, trying to get inside and hit, JD in the dunker spot.
He decided he wanted to pass and try to score. It was crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, you could put a shot up and try to draw a foul. Like, he was dead set on getting JD the ball in that spot and turning it over the same way twice. Yeah, just a lot of chaos. Obviously, his teammates saved him immediately from, like, I don't know what he said to Cat, but he stood over him and he grabbed his leg. But they immediately were like, "Hey, we gotta, you gotta calm down." Like, Cade and Tease, they immediately cut that all the way out.
Okay, so I know fans are going to appreciate this because you and I don't get quite as emotional, and so we can laugh a couple hours after a heartbreaking loss. So sorry to everybody else. Here's what I thought was funny: when Cade boomed on Cat with his left hand, he wanted to point at him, and I feel like you could see in Cade's head he was going, "Oh shoot, I can't do this." After I got mad at the young buck for trying to talk trash. So
I got to set the example for the Rick,
Yes, it was awesome.
So that was funny. It was just funny that they both admittedly had that instinct.
That was an aggressive push. An aggressive push from Cade.
It was like, not now. I just want to know what Ron said. That immediately they was just like, okay, we got to immediately cut this out now. Like, it just cracked me up watching it live. Like it was just such a Ron moment. And I'm still waiting for Ron to kind of have like that Ron performance in the playoffs that the Pistons really have kind of critically needed, especially in the last 2 games. Just somebody to come in and just be a little rough and tumble and maybe get the energy going. And yeah, the process just wasn't there tonight. I did think he had a game 3. They could actually use him in game 5. So I'm curious to see if he can harness that energy and do the Ron Hollis stuff that's been so good for him all season.
I saw somebody kind of called out that nobody defensive rebounds. Like, I agree. Like, the Knicks had 12 tonight. 3 of those are Mitchell Robinson, a lot of times against Paul Reed. As much as I love Paul Reed, he just can't box him out. I will say 2 guys that do defensive rebound and don't rebound offensively. So, like, that is Tobias Harris and Cade Cunningham. Tobias had 7 and Cade had 9. They had a game earlier in the series, I think it was the game 2 win, where they both had double-digit only defensive rebounds. So, Tweet House, how much would we have to pay for on-court Mike's Only feed? Tweet House, like, this is what I thought we were going to get in the bubble, and we didn't. And I was pissed because I was like, this is going to be amazing. Like, even if they have to bleep out I want to know what they're saying. I think it would be amazing. I recently got to go to a Nuggets Lakers game and set second row on the baseline where you could at least read JJ Redick's lips. And it was amazing. Like, the things he said to people and what he was saying whenever they messed up.
JJ carries himself like a European coach. The way he drills it to his players. I'm like, you don't see all the NBA coaches just going into their guys like this. He doesn't care.
I feel bad for our guy Dalton Connect because he was getting it the worst in the regular season. Anytime he blew a defensive coverage, and JJ was on one that night because LeBron and Luka weren't playing, so he could care less who he was going to chew out that was on the court. So, all right, let's talk JB real fast. I feel like for the players, that's pretty much everybody we touched on. Yeah, I think we can move on from that. So, MC313, do we feel like JB has adjusted as the series goes, or have the playoffs really been the players, really been the driving force? And YouTube user brings up a sentiment that we brought back when he was hired. I hate to say this, but I think everyone knows JB is the coach that gets you competing in the playoffs, and another coach takes you over the top. Thoughts on JB kind of throughout the series and anything specifically tonight? I know a lot of people are frustrated with the challenge early in the game.
Yeah, the early challenges are weird. Beyond that, I don't really have any criticisms for JB. I think this is one of those series where a lot of the issues people have with the coach are just more so like inherent roster issues that they just can't solve. Like, I don't necessarily think JB's doing anything to hurt this team. I thought they came in kind of immediately answered some of the questions we had, like, how do you handle Cat? They switched to Tobias, put him on there, him instead of Durant, which, I think was the smartest thing you could do with Isaiah Stewart being out. And that's the thing, too. I'd like Isaiah Stewart's out. So that also, as a coach, is something else you don't have in your toolkit that you really need. I don't have any issues with JB this series. I really don't. They've been in every single game. Like you said, the net ratings are minus 0.6. They've been on the wrong end of some calls. Cat and Brunson have hit some crazy shots. I don't really have any issues with JB at all. I think the roster is what the roster is. I think they've managed it to the extent that they can. They already had a winning formula against the Knicks in the regular season that they've just tweaked a little bit in the playoffs. I don't think they necessarily needed to make any dramatic adjustments coming in. Just got to, sustain what you already had. Yeah. I don't know if you feel differently, but I really don't have any real qualms with JB. I just think this is one of those situations where the coach just can't solve inherent limitations that are on the roster.
Yeah. I would say, there's definitely stuff I can nitpick, right? Like, I mentioned 7 times now, like Ausar getting some, offense, defense possessions in the fourth quarter, and maybe some offensive adjustments and some things like that. Like, there's definitely nitpicky things. The challenge early in the game didn't seem like that was a great decision. The Jalen Duren taking the ball out of bounds at the end of, was that game 3, right? And ended up, so there are some definite things, and you could say important things. I understand all of that, but I'm not here about to crush a guy because this team got to the playoffs at least a year too early. And at times someone just said it. The roster's not ready. Right? Mel, 75, JB needs to be judged in the playoffs more long-term when the roster is better. Here's my thing, O2. I think the Knicks have 4 of the 5 best players in the series. I'm a believer that players win games. Players win series. Do coaching adjustments help? Absolutely. I'm not saying coaches are inconsequential, but at the end of the day, I think there are little things here and there, but I'm not overly upset. So yeah, and as Wes says, how many offensive and maybe even defensive adjustments you want with a super young team that's never been here before?
Yeah, they mostly just got to follow the same script outside of a few changes, and I think that's the best way to go about it. No need to overcomplicate it. No need to throw everything, like the entire book at a series that's literally neck and neck, like 2 possessions away from this being tied, or like the Pistons even being up 3-1. Not to cut you off, but I'm not surprised people are starting to get mad at JB JB. I just don't think it's fair to him. Like, this isn't a roster that is equipped to handle every single thing the Knicks are throwing at him. Like, and that's just the reality of it.
Organic says JB is a great culture coach, not a good X and O's adjustments coach. It's not unfair to point that out. I don't think it's unfair either, Organic. That's what we're here for, is to talk about these things. I just don't I hope that it doesn't become like, oh, we need to make a move. Michael, I appreciate you being here. Natural course of progression. JB got lucky. I would very respectfully disagree that going from 14 wins to an insanely impressive playoff series against the Knicks team the very next year is not necessarily the natural course of progression. Maybe I have too low of expectations, but I would think there would be a different step. I think the Pistons I think they skipped the step going from 14 to where they're at right now. And that's a credit to JB, Trajan, and the players, Omari.
Yeah. And I would also say people were mad at JB for having Duran inbound the ball at the end of game 3. And honestly, they just messed up at an open inbounds pass. Like, I wasn't on JB at all. Like, they just didn't make the pass. So that was another example where I thought people were like, well, why would the coach have JD throw the ball in? And it's like, well, the pass to Cade was right there. They just didn't do it. But yeah, players got to execute. I think as the roster gets better, as they address some of their other weaknesses, we'll have a better idea of how to judge him as a playoff coach. But, I mean, this team just won its first playoff game since I was in 8th grade. So I'm not about to sit here and tear the coach up for leading an overall successful season. No coach is perfect, but I don't think he's cost him anything either.
Steven Sugg says, as far as coaching goes, I think Bryce needs to be an assistant coach in the NBA because of the great player breakdowns you do on Substack. They're so professional.
That's right.
I mean, Steven, the phone line is open. The phone line is open if anybody wants to. No, they have great coaches in the NBA. I just try to provide what I can for all of you. Wes says, unrelated, but JD also committed an inbound violation on that pass. I saw everybody talking about it, but AO, Coach Brett, there's a coach somewhere for some team that looks just like me, so my doppelganger's already in the NBA. I don't think you can have 2 bald guys with long beards coaching in the league. Anything else? I think this team's going to respond in Game 5. I have no reason not to. It's what they've done all year in game situations, from game-to-game situations. I think we'll see a really good performance from them. Your thoughts, O2? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this team has been pretty resilient all season. Again, they know what they need to do against this Knicks team. It's really just executing. And the margins have been close to them that, I mean, yeah, the Knicks could take care of it in front of their home court. I could also see, the Pistons making this a Game 7. It's really been a fun series, too. I'll just say I really enjoyed watching the series. It's been an incredibly fun series, one of the best first-round series, of any of the series right now. And yeah, I'm having fun. I'll just leave it there. I'm having fun, win, lose, draw. I think it's been a really fun series. A lot of good basketball. And these teams are really competed, man. The Pistons have nothing to be ashamed of. They could go out to Game 5 and they should be pretty confident.
I'm with you. I've had a lot of fun watching it. I think we've got a lot of data collection. I know that Pistons fans are disappointed and frustrated, and I understand it. I had an interaction with somebody on Blue Sky today, a longtime supporter, and I appreciate him very much. And I knew he was just frustrated. And I told him, I said, if something like this happened to the Chiefs, I would be pissed. I would be right there. But yeah, I just hope that eventually Pistons fans will be able to see the success of everything that's going on. And that doesn't mean we can't call out little things here and there, but just as somebody that enjoys basketball in the NBA, O2, I'm with you. I think this has been awesome. I think it's been an awesome series and a lot of fun to break down. I wrote almost 7 pages of notes today watching that game, and it's awesome. So yeah, and we went 15 minutes longer than we thought we were going to, talking about a single game in the playoffs. We didn't talk about anything other than essentially Game 4. I think that says all we need to know about how this game went and how this series is going. I'm excited for Game 5 on Tuesday. I hope we get a Game 6 and a Game 7 next weekend. But if not, it'll be fun while it lasted. O2, well, first, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. Like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know. Have them come listen. Listen to the Pin Down on Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. All of you guys supporting. Send your emails to the Detroit Pistons for my assistant coaching position. Somebody told me the bylaws about the bald guys were out of here. So, MC313, but who will the Pistons draft with their first round pick? I love it.
Nobody.
We do not have to talk about this. Well played, my friend. And make sure you're reading Omari Sankofa on the Detroit Free Press. Make sure you're checking out the Motor City Hoops Substack. Would appreciate a subscribe for free over there. Thank you, Organic. Great show. We appreciate it. Omari, take it away, my guy.
Absolutely. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery Nichols, and big shout out to Wes Davenport as always. And we'll talk to you after Game 5.